Here's integrated 3, it's problem 2-80. It says sketch a function that has a domain where x is in between negative infinity and 10. Actually, you don't want that underlining part right there. And then a range where y is in between negative 4 and 6. So I'm going to show two different ways. Since it says the word sketch, I don't necessarily have to have graph paper, but if you already are using graph paper, you need to use it correctly. So I want my x values in between negative infinity and 10. So I don't just willy-nilly put a 10. Like, I'm going to actually pay attention to the lines. There's 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When I label my 10, it needs to be by the line, not. So here's what I'm seeing people do. If you're doing it like this, if you think that it's normal or okay to label the numbers like this, they don't go in between the lines. They go on the lines when you're graphing. So if I did feel like I had to put the numbers on every single one of these, I would put them here on the line. 1, 2, 3. See how I'm not putting them in between in the spaces? I'm paying attention to my graph. Okay, I'm not telling you that you need to put all the numbers. You could just use the number 10. And I'm not going to bother labeling all these numbers. I will call this is the x-axis and the y-axis. I'm not going to label all those numbers because my graph's going to go off into infinity. And it's going to not extend beyond 10 to the right. My y values are going to be in between negative 4 and 6. So if it was my graph, I would just go 1, 2, 3, 4. This is negative 4 right here. Notice that I wrote the negative 4 right next to the line, not in the space part. And then 6 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See how I'm writing it right, straddling that line? Okay, that's important. Otherwise, you don't know which little tick mark the numbers go with because it's like floating in between. Like, don't put your 1 over here in between the 0 and the 1, and don't put the 1 in between the 1 and the 2. You have to put it right under the tick mark. And so I want my domain to go from negative 10, or from 10 to negative infinity, and I want my range between negative 4 and 6. And it said I can be creative. So as long as I have a high point at 6 and a low point at 4, I think we'll be fine. So I think I'm going to just put a dot somewhere, like maybe right here. And then maybe I'll let it go down, let it go to 4, and then it needs to go up at least as high as 6. And then it's just going to go off into infinity. So that would be okay for a graph. I'm going to show your book. Your book wrote this, like that. So if you're looking in your book and you're wanting to copy that graph, then you still see how they make the 5 right above the little line. The thing about your book is if you don't already know how to graph, this is going to confuse you a lot because they're counting by probably 2s. 2, 4, 6. They're counting by 2s. Like, they're using the grid marks as 2s, and so if you don't know how to graph, it makes you think that you're supposed to write the numbers in between the grid marks, but you're not. Okay, so just be careful. And then there's another way to do this. If I wasn't using graph paper, I could do it a lot more simply. I could just go like this and be a minimalist. And I could say, well, x is in between. I'll just put a 10 here, and then that's infinity to the left. And then I'll just put a negative 4, and I don't even have to make all the marks, as long as I am labeling. And then I'll put up here, maybe a little higher, farther away, I'll put a 6. And then I could still make a graph. And maybe I'll make this graph a little different. Maybe I'll put it right here. So now I've got my high point at 6 and my farthest right point at 10. And maybe I can just have it go something like that if I want to. Okay, so this is okay if you're sketching a graph, but it's just important that you put some markings on it. So I don't care which way you do it. The way I don't want you to do it is what I see on people's papers sometimes. I see people going like this. Okay, that doesn't tell me where, I mean, that's not how you do it, unless you want to, even if you tried to put your own little marks in there, now you're making it super confusing because of the grid marks that are already on the paper. So don't do it that way. Do it this way or this way.